Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to sync the throttle bodies on your fuel-injected motorcycle. I'm using a specific example of a Yamaha FJR 1300. This applies to all models. It's the same procedure. The only difference may be on your bike how you get to the throttle bodies themselves. If you have a carbureted bike, you're going to be doing a very similar procedure. It's a little bit simpler. It's all mechanical. It's just called syncing your throttle butterflies. Now the point of this procedure is to make sure that each of your throttle bodies is opening the exact same amount so that all of your cylinders is trying to make the exact same amount of power. On a car, you typically only have one throttle body, which is a metal disc that hinges in the middle. You have your air filter and a tube going to the engine. Inside that is a metal flap and it hinges like that. That's how you tell the engine that you want to make more power. When you step on the throttle, on your pedal, or twist your throttle grip, it opens that little metal disc. Well, on motorcycles or any other high performance engine, you have multiple throttle bodies. Cars typically share one and then they split and the air goes to all the cylinders after the throttle body. Bikes have one per cylinder. Think of it as a line. This is a 4-cylinder engine, so think of it as a line of 4 people all walking next to each other with their arms locked. And as long as they're all taking the exact same stride, no problemo. But if you get one person that's walking a little bit slower, things get a little hairy. You get some tension between the 4 of you and you're not really in sync. That's what happens to the engine. If one or more cylinders is not trying to make the exact same amount of power as the other ones, one big thing you get is vibration. That's the typical major byproduct. But you can also have a little lag in throttle response, especially off of idle. What you want is a nice, smooth, purring, responsive engine. This is a normal maintenance item. It absolutely has to be done periodically. Typically right after break-in, that's what I'm doing here, and then after certain periods of time. Check your owner's manual or service manuals for those intervals for your particular bike. So to start on this particular model, I'm going to be following my service manual, which again I absolutely suggest anybody that's going to be doing their own maintenance on a bike get. They're very inexpensive, they get very detailed, and you can do anything to the bike with the help of the service manual and the right tools. We're not going to need too many specialty tools for this job. There's really only one that you're not typically going to find in any auto store, and I'll show you that in a bit, and that's simply a vacuum gauge. They're not too expensive though, don't worry about it. So to start on this one, following the service manual instructions, I'm going to first remove the seats, no big deal there. We're going to remove this one plastic trim piece right here, this silver bit, and then we are going to remove the fuel tank and a support bar that's underneath it. I know it sounds scary. Throttle body sync is one of the big items that's normal maintenance that people get so scared about and take it to their dealer. There's absolutely no this is just as easy, believe it or not, and if I wasn't doing this video, just as quick, if not quicker, than doing an oil change. It really is. You just have to have that one tool. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start taking the stuff off, and I'll show you on this. This will apply to 2013 and up at least, how to take off this piece, and we'll be tipping the gas tank back to get access. Okay, taking off the seats, no big deal here, of course. Now, if you didn't see some of my previous videos, the one big tip I have about seats is store them on a very soft surface. Do not set them down on the concrete. I've had seats by myself damaged just from rubbing the very edges on rough surfaces. So get a towel or something like that and set them down and just protect the edges. That's all you have to do. Taking this trim piece off is extremely easy. We only have 4 fasteners. It's a combination of a quick lock here. It takes a Phillips head screwdriver and you just give it a quarter twist and it pops out. It works just like the ones taking off the front cowl to get to the battery. Basically like one of those quick little picture hanging things, just plastic. Set that aside, and then up above it, this takes a 4mm Allen key, and these are under almost no pressure because these are just going into plastic with little metal tabs. You just tighten these back down to snug. Nothing here is going to be tight at all. And then carefully take that out, set that aside. I'm going to do the same on the other side, and then there is just a clip right here. And this whole thing will just pop out. Just carefully bend it out right here, and it pops right out. And once I take those other two fasteners off, this just lifts right off. Here you can see how I have all my gear packed under the seat, or seats I should say, and you can check all that out as what I pack on a motorcycle in my video that I did on that at TwoWheelObsession.com. All kinds of stuff, anything you pretty much need to keep on going, fix yourself or fix your bike or fix somebody else. Definitely check that out. Here you can see how these attach. They're just plastic studs, and they go into these rubber grommets. So they're not in there with any kind of tension. They just pop out. There's just a little lip here that catches and keeps it snug in there. Very easy, pops right off. Here you can see a little rubber tab, and this goes into this slot right here. So when you put this back on, you kind of slide it down into this, and then these just pop back into place. That's all there is to it. You put your quick fastener back in and your screw back in. Getting the tank out of the way is actually very simple. We're only going to be removing two fasteners. These two big Allen screws right up here. Now, you can use, these are 5mm by the way, you can use an Allen key. If you do, be very, very careful, because these are under pressure, and you do not want this to snap and damage your paint. If you're going to do this, put a towel over this, do what you have to do to protect your finishes. I don't suggest using one of these here. What I suggest is using a 5mm socket adapter. Absolutely minimizes your risk. Very easy to remove. They're short screws, so they only have a little bit of tension. That's it. Now I can take them out by hand. Now the gas tank, the service manual says completely remove it, disconnect all the lines, yada yada yada. It's not actually needed. What we can do is prop it up several inches, because all we need is room to get under it to connect our gauge to the throttle bodies and have enough room to work a little wrench or screwdriver. That doesn't take much, so we don't need to disassemble and remove the whole gas tank. There is enough slack under here, at least there should be, to just lift it up. It pivots from the back. And by the way, this is easier on an empty tank, but here's the thing. You don't want it empty, because we're going to be running the engine while it's tilted. So actually do this with close to a full tank. Now what we're going to do, because we have the top fasteners removed, the tank has a pivot bolt right down here where the seat comes in. And all we're going to do is loosen the nut side. This is on the right side of the bike. We're going to loosen it, but not remove it, because we just want the gas tank to be able to pivot. This takes a 15mm socket. And that's it. Just spin it a little bit. And now what we can do is tilt the gas tank. So now we've got plenty of clearance. And this is really all we have to do is tilt it up about 25-30 degrees or so. And then what you can do is prop it up. Now you can take it back as far as it'll go. What it actually stops on is the seat bracket. So it's a piece of plastic. You're not held up by any fuel lines or electrical cables. You got plenty of slack in there. I just used an old textbook. You can use a piece of 2x4, whatever is going to be sturdy and not going to damage your paint in case anything happens. Obviously this is touching the paint, but a textbook fits perfectly. Plenty of room in here. All we're going to do now is remove this T-bracket right here. And we've just got 3 bolts. We're going to pop this out, and then we're just going to remove this heat shield, and that's going to give us direct access to our throttle bodies. These 3 bolts are 14mm, and if this looks awkward, it's really not. It's just because I have to have a certain angle so you guys can see what I'm doing. These come out very easily. Really under just a little bit of torque. Now this angle's a little odd for me here because I'm not left-handed. And again, doing it so you guys can see. The only thing you want to be careful about is when it snaps loose, You don't want anything hitting your paint. All right, you know what? I'm going to shift angles so I can get these last two out, and then I'll pull this bar out. The only thing unusual about pulling the bar out, you'll find this fastener here underneath the bolt on the right-hand side, and it's just to keep some lines in place that are going over the bar. So don't forget to put this back in, and just make sure the lines are going underneath it when you put the bar back in the bike. And these two bolts here have the washers, so make sure those go back in the right place. And you don't need any Loctite on any of these fasteners to go back in. They just go back in and they go down to snug. Tightest bolt you're going to find is that one on the tank hinge itself. That's just a nut. You're only taking these to about 14 foot-pounds. Just real good and snug. Now the bar slides back just a little bit just to clear these tabs, and carefully take it out. Obviously it's solid aluminum. You don't want it banging any of your finish. Okay, now down in here, and make sure that's the only one, should be, there is a quick connect, a quick fastener. Adjust the camera here for you. Get some light in here. Sorry, I'm a one-man band with these videos, so don't have any help doing them. Right down here, just another quarter turn Phillips quick connect, just like the plastic trim piece. So we're going to pop this out, and then this slides right out. Now under here we have two electrical connectors going to the fuel tank, and we just need to pop these off so that we can feed them through the heat shield. What they have are these push tabs. You just push on this middle tab right here, push it in, and gently wiggle it and pull it back. Doesn't take much force at all. Just have to make sure it's pushed in while you're wiggling. And as you can see, the green one is on the other side. So push in from the right side of the bike on the green, from the left-hand side of the bike on the white. Now that we got those loose, we just want to feed them through. Do them one at a time so there's clearance. Now we can fold this up and see our throttle body assemblies. Okay, this is really the only hard part about this entire job, and it's not even hard, it is, depending on the size of your hands, just a complete pain in the ass. Right there in the center of your screen you will see a little rubber cap. Right here. Okay, there's one on each throttle body. First one is right here. And around these rubber caps are little tiny spring clips. And they come on and off by pinching them. What I've got here is just a set of long needle nose pliers. And I'm not going to do this on camera because I really need two hands to do it. But I'm going to show you. That's all it takes. Just a little bit of a pinch. And they slide up. These things disappear, okay? So do the rubber caps. What you want to do is take the springs off first, then go back and carefully slide the caps off. Once these springs are off, these caps slide off very easily. Just be careful that you don't tear them. Don't put a lot of pinch force on them. If you can use your fingers, you're just going to have to kind of wing it. It really depends on the size of your hands. Mine are big and fat, and it is just a pain in the butt. So I'm going to go ahead and carefully take off all these caps, and that is what we're going to attach our tool to. These are the vacuum ports to each of the throttle bodies. You're going to want to switch sides, do two, and then go over to the other side of the bike and do the other two. Now that I've got them out, I can kind of show you my little trick, my technique of how I get these on and off. So these are just little tiny spring clips here. And what I do is I come in from the top, pinch them together, and then I kind of rotate, and what it'll do is slip down onto the side, and the whole thing comes off the nipple like that. So make sure that you have these real good. Even if they slip like that, that's okay, because they're going to catch 90 degrees. That's actually better. And then the cap, you just want to roll it off the nipple. Putting it on is a little more difficult than taking it off, because you have to position it right. But you're going to want to pinch them together, bring it straight down over the nipple, use another hand to push it down, and just make sure that it doesn't pop and go flying on you. But that's it. Alright, so now we have our vacuum openings. Let me readjust the cam here so you can see. Right in the middle there, you can see the tip of the brass vacuum tip right there. So now we're going to attach our special tool. Here's our only special tool needed for this job. It's a vacuum gauge. Basically, it's kind of like a reverse thermometer. These are glass tubes, one per cylinder. We have a 4-cylinder bike, so I needed a 4-cylinder gauge. And we just have these rubber tubes. And obviously we're going to connect one to each of the cylinder or throttle body nipples. And this is going to draw vacuum. The engine is going to draw vacuum. And there are metal rods down in the bottom of these glass tubes. And they're going to come up. And we have obviously a scale on this gauge. Now, book spec is no more than 10 millimeters HG. This is in centimeters HG, and each of these lines represents 2 centimeters. So our tolerance is going to be 1/2 of these major sections on the gauge. Now, what we have to do first is reconnect the 2 electrical lines that go to the gas tank, because we do need to start up the engine to run the test. So I'm going to clip those 2 back to the gas tank, and then I'm going to connect the gauge up. Cylinder 1 going to the left, 2, 3, and 4. Now, it very well may be that your bike is going to be in spec. Most of the time, though, especially after the initial or a very long amount of time or a number of miles on the bike, it's probably going to be out, at least from book spec. So, all we have to do to adjust it is use a long, skinny, regular screwdriver. You could use a big jeweler's screwdriver, not a huge one, but no more than this big, let me put it that way. And there's plenty of room in here to get in to make the adjustment. And I'll show you that after we get everything reattached. Okay, we've got our gauge attached. Fuel tank electricals back in place. You can see why you need close to a full tank to do this, because if it was empty, you would be running out of gas. So what we're going to do now is idle the engine for 5 minutes. Don't rev it, just let it sit there. We want it to come up to full operating temperature. After 5 minutes, we can take our reading and see where we're at. So let's do that now. As soon as I put it in neutral, there we go. So what we found is that cylinders 2 and 3 are slightly out of spec. The way you read that is, number one, it has to be completely vertical. Cylinder number 1 is your master. It is the standard. It's what the computer is calibrated to. You always go by cylinder number 1, and there's usually going to be a paint mark somewhere on that throttle body or a designation of some kind. And in my case, it's in the service manual. You never touch number 1. If you do, you're in for a bad time trying to get it back to where the computer had a sync to it. All right, so we're only ever going to be touching all the other cylinders or whatever is out of spec. Now, cylinders 2 and 3, as you saw, were just slightly, I mean, they were like 12, 13, 14 millimeters out of spec, tolerance being 10. They were just over a centimeter on this gauge. So what we need to do is bring them down to match the levels of 1 and 4, which were nice and even. It does not matter what specific numbers they're at on any of the gauges. All we're looking at is the variance between cylinders. These could say any number in the world, 1 million, doesn't matter. We're just looking at the difference between all the different cylinder readings. So we're going to go to 1, that's our standard. We're going to match number 2 and 3 until they are at the same level. Now they're pulling more vacuum. This is raising the bar more, so they're trying to suck more through the tube, which means their throttle bodies are opening too much. Now what we have is some adjustment screws, 1 per cylinder. Really simple, turning the screw counterclockwise or backing it out closes the throttle body, so it's going to lower this on the gauge. So that's what we're going to do. How much completely depends on your bike, and we'll be able to do it real time. I'll show you here where the screws are on the throttle bodies. Pretty much any bike is going to have them in about the same place, and they're going to be the only screws on the throttle bodies, so that's all you have to look for. If you have carburetors, you're going to have typically a high and a low screw setting and maybe an idle adjustment screw. Depends on Mikuni or Kian, but that's another story. On throttle bodied bikes, you're just going to have the 1 adjustment screw. And to get to it, where did that go? Right here. This is where we're going to use our long flathead screwdriver, and I'll show you where it is here. I'm going to show you number 1, but again, you never touch number 1. Right here. Okay, so we're going to go to the other throttle bodies, and we're going to go to 2 and 3 in this case, and just turn these counterclockwise a little bit, watching our gauge. This is going to be done while the engine is idling. After we make an adjustment, the only important part with doing this is that you blip the throttle a couple times, just real quick, not a big rev or anything like that. You just want to kind of disrupt the flow so this has a little movement and has a chance to bounce back to where it's supposed to be. You just go blip, blip, okay, that's it. And you'll see me do it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now, and we'll get 2 and 3 leveled out, and then we can just put it back together. So there you go. Really easy job. Save yourself hundreds of dollars. If you were to do the typical 600-mile service at the dealer, they're going to charge you about $700 is typical. And that's consisting of what you just saw plus the 2 oil changes. Even if you have to buy the special tools, you're at maybe $120, $130 for a tool and some materials, and a couple hours doing it your first time. Believe me, it's worth it. Just save the hassle. There's nothing difficult about any of these procedures. Now, assembly is just the opposite of what I showed you. Really not that much to it. The only suggestion I have is let it cool down for a good hour, because we have been running it here, so things are a little hot under the hood. Just makes it easier on yourself. If you don't mind the heat, go ahead and button it back up. But there's nothing special to reassembly. That's it. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, definitely please do me a favor. Share it, like it, comment, subscribe. Tell anybody you know that rides. I'm going to have plenty more how-tos. And of course, all the regular motovlogs during the week. And definitely, if you're only watching this on YouTube, check out TwoWheelObsession.com, because we do have other people contributing to the site also with their own really cool videos. All right, that's it. See you later, guys.